This is our What's New with Goodman Games seminar. I'm going to give you the usual rundown of projects in motion, a couple new things, talk about some of the stuff the authors are working on, let them talk about some of the stuff they're working on, and talk about some art that I didn't bring with me, but I'll describe it really well. You can go see it at Doug's booth. So to start with, I'm going to give a little bit of an update on some recent things, as soon as my phone orients itself. So I think most of you guys know this, but Dcc Halloween is shipping now. If you haven't gotten it already, it'll probably arrive while you're here at Gen Con. The main box that is shipped out, the print packs will follow. And if you want to see it, you can check it out here at the show. The Dcc Annual, we had some express shipped to the show, but aside from those, the rest are about a month out from now, but they'll ship in about a month when we get them. And then Cthulhu Alphabet is at the printer. I'm going to soon post one of those Kickstarter updates that's like, no news is good news, because there's no news, but it's at the printer, slowly working its way through, and we'll get to you guys in a couple months. And then I'm going to give you a quick update on the Judges Guild volume. As you guys know, we have a giant book, which is the collector's edition, which is a really cool format and accommodates the page size of the Judges Guild Journal from back in the day. Volume 2 is, the contents of Volume 2 are finally complete. So that's the Janelle Jackway's edition, and we had to scan a lot of things, and especially scanning that old newsprint is extremely challenging. The person who does it has to sort of reconstruct the entire page, but he's done with the first pass. So I'm going to give you the list of what's going to be in the table of contents. We're going to actually start layout soon now that we have all the scans done. But the book will include the Book of Treasure Maps, the Caverns of Thracia, Dark Tower, and then the first 6 issues of Dungeoneer. What's particularly neat about that is a lot of people have seen the Dungeoneer compilation that was done at a later date by Judges Guild, but very few people have seen the actual original zines. And Janelle Jackway's actually has like 2 copies of each of the original ones that she published way back then. So we got a hold of those and scanned those, and they're really cool. She also has a ton of additional material in terms of old photographs, old high school sketches, old art books, all this stuff. So we're kind of sifting through a huge pile of interesting stuff from memorabilia from the Judges Guild era that will eventually go in there as well. And then some more issues of Judges Guild Journal. We'll have issue number 12/U, because they used to do that, which is the one that shipped with Dark Tower. We'll have issue number 14/W, which is the one that shipped with Book of Treasure Maps. And then we'll have Dungeoneer number 12, not to be confused with Judges Guild Journal number 12, which shipped with Caverns of Thracia. And then another just really cool issue, which was issue M of the Judges Guild Journal, which is just one I like. And then the other thing that was unearthed is Bob Bloodside Jr. managed to find a bunch of old distributor, we often give things to distributors to convince them to buy stuff and sell it to retailers. He found a bunch of old distributor sales sheets that had Jackway's art on it that was never seen by consumers because it was only distributed to the trade. So we're going to have some scans of that as well. So it's a lot of cool stuff. So we're finally moving into the layout stage, and you guys will get some more updates on that soon, but it's coming along. Now I was going to talk a little bit about Empire of the East, which is this cover right here. We talked to Gary Kahn about how we have a license from the estate of Fred Saberhagen for his 3-volume series of Empire of the East, which is post-apocalyptic, intelligent nuclear warheads, crazy radiation cloud demons. Like, it's a really cool setting that involves a giant tank as well. But one thing, and this is the art by Ian Miller, which is phenomenal. I've been a fan of his art for decades. One of the things we'll be doing going forward is some of these supplements will be produced for DCC, and then also there will be a 5e edition, which isn't necessarily the same material because 5e is, to a certain extent, more receptive to stats for new monsters or new items or things like that. So I'm going to show you the cover to the 5e edition too. So when we finally do a Kickstarter on this, there'll be 2 versions. So this is by David Griffith, which will have a different look than the DCC edition. This will be obviously more digital and keeping with what we've done for some of the 5e products. Anyway, those of you who have read the story will recognize a lot of the imagery there, but it's by Jason Bay, and the 5e edition will go sort of side by side in the launch of the DCC edition. It is a cool idea to publish for both editions. I mean, I think 5e to a certain extent captures a lot of the respect for the old school that we also attempt to do in DCC, and I think they're pretty compatible in a lot of ways. So then I wanted to give you a quick update on Xcall Classics. Where's the man with the green hair? There he is. Do you want to come up and just give a quick update on how things are going?
Sure. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Brennan.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. LaSalle.
Good evening. Xcall has been in the 95% done stage for quite a while. It's been there, and it's sort of remained there because other works come up that both Joseph needed me to do and that I really wanted to do, and because It's going to be a while until it can get into the larger publication schedule. So as long as I can hang on to that and keep playtesting it and coming up with new stuff, I am going to do that. Since I sort of like put it into It's Getting Done mode, I've actually written 3 other adventures since then, moved to Georgia, done a couple other interesting things. So it's, like I said, if Joe put a gun in my head and said it has to be done in 2 weeks, it would be done in 10 days. It's at that stage of getting it done. I'm having a lot of fun with it. If anyone's playing Swack Iron Murder Queen this weekend, that is all with the new character classes.
Say that again slower. What was the name of that module again?
Swack Iron Murder Queen.
I know exactly what that's about based on the title.
Yes.
Do you want to tell them though, in case they didn't understand?
Sure. Oh gosh, it's complicated. So it is the return of a classic Xcrawl villain who takes over another person's dungeon in a virtual setting and dubs herself in this new reality that she is now sort of like taken control of as the Swack Iron Murder Queen. And the name came from I saw a list of science fiction movie titles as written by a neural network, and I was scanning through them, and that wasn't, one of them was close to that, but it was close enough that it made me think of Swack Iron. If anyone follows Knights at the Dinner Table, I'm a huge fan, and one of the creatures in there is the Swack Iron Dragon is out of that and such. So it was close enough. It was weird. It was like the ship iron or ship metal or something like that, Murder Queen. And I was like, nah, that's not quite it. Swack Iron Murder Queen. Just thinking of that sort of like captured my imagination and sort of became like the star that I sailed this entire adventure by. The idea that like, because at least in the history of Knights at the Dinner Table, it's the thing that shows up and murders everybody and then just leaves devastation in its wake. So that is where that came from. But I also just like a good phrase, and I thought that was a good one. So, and I think sometimes making a thing that sounds really good is as important as any other thing. So that is where it comes from. So that's using all of the new Xcrawl character classes. There's a gnome class in there, which is of course going to be Joe's new favorite. Reluctant gnome lover here. He won't talk about it, but he loves the gnome class. It's going to have half orcs. It's going to have half elves. And then it's got the original classes, all from the earlier iterations of Xcrawl. So it's going to have athletes, brawlers, blasters, specialists, messengers, and the one that I can't think of. But they're in there, I promise. Oh, jammers, of course. Gotta have jammers. Goodness gracious. So yeah, that's it's done enough where I feel like I could play a campaign to almost any level with it at this point. I keep thinking of new spells and new things I want to change and things I want to do, and I'm going to keep doing that for absolutely as long as I can. So until I get the green light, I'm going to keep tinkering with it. I'm going to keep I have a huge playtest group. I've got like, I don't even know, like 6 playtest groups that are actively sending me things at this point. So I'm going to keep tinkering with it because I really, Xcrawl has been my baby since my home campaign that I started in 1999. I ran it for a long time, never thinking, hey, someday I'll be a game designer and publish this. It was just something to amuse me and my friends that kind of grew and grew and grew until I thought, I could. So I pitched it to Panda Head, who said, yes, we can do it. And then they said, hey, can you get us 90,000 words in 7 weeks? And I nearly cried. This close.
We'll continue that tradition.
Yes. But we'll get it done. So that's where it's at right now, and I'm really trying to make it just the absolute best thing that it can be. Xcrawl is weird. A lot of you will not like it. But I think some people will be able to take bits from it that they really enjoy. They're all going to like it. It's a universal thing. Everyone's going to fall in love. Your mask will fall and become a part of you. So, that's all I got to say about that.
All right, thanks, Brendan. So Xcall Classics coming soon to a store near you. Now, I wanted to invite some people up here to talk about DCC Dying Earth. So Julian, Mark, Terry, and where's Bob?
Right.
Come on up. So you guys may have heard of a guy named Jack Vance, who wrote a couple novels called the Dying Earth series. Mark was talking at Gary Con about DCC Dying Earth. I don't know if we mentioned this, but these are the guys, the main guys working on this project. And I wanted them to come up and just talk about this cool project they're working on. So I was going to, ask you guys some completely unrehearsed questions you've never heard before. Maybe you can make them completely spontaneous answers. But you guys feel free to ask questions and we'll go from there. So, well, why don't we just pick Julian for this one? How is DCC Dying Earth different from regular DCC?
The good news is Dying Earth is going to be 100% compatible with your regular DCC game. So, so you can play and mix and match and use it modularly and stuff like that. The biggest, I think by far the biggest pieces that are really different are the classes. So we got, and DCC is kind of a class-based game, as most of you probably know. So the big rule changes are 4 new classes. There's the Magician, who's the Rialto, high-powered, crazy magician, Vancian magic guy. There's the Bat Thing, like the Bat creatures in the Dying Earth short stories. I can never remember the name of it that starts with the T.
The church in the stories.
Yeah. No, so the Bat Thing, of course.
Oh, just Sias and
Sias and yes. And then there's the Witch, also from the Dying Earth novel. And then, of course, my personal favorite, the Wayfarer. Yeah. And you know who that is. That's our roguish Kugel friend. So, so those 4 classes are brand new, and a lot of the core mechanics and the rules of the Dying Earth are embedded in those classes. The Vancian magic, the crazy luck rules around the Wayfarer that sort of mimic the crazy turns of fortune that Kugel would have in the books. The Witch has a lot of sort of semi-clerical stuff and curses and wizardry and demonic pacts and all that good stuff. And then the Vat Thing is a really interesting character that kind of depends on their patron, has 3 different templates, is very flexible, can do a lot of things, and I think they're all casters as well, if I recall.
Yeah,
and the Wayfarer to a limited extent.
Yes, yeah, it's a very magic-focused class system.
Yes. It's odd because it feels, I think it will feel gritty for people, but at the same time there's a lot of magic in it. And there's also, you can also play, I believe, Wizard, Warrior, and Thief.
Yeah, because I mean, we want to make sure that you could port it just like any Langmar, for example. You can play it as straight DCC. Your characters get transported there. You're suddenly in the Dying Earth. Well, you need to have some way of adjudicating on how that would work. So we did include rules for those classes, but they're also, those are internal templates. In terms of what those character classes represent. So they're present in the Dying Earth as well if you want to mix and match them with different things.
Absolutely. So there's the classes, a lot of the core, the biggest changes are there, but of course there's 30-some spells.
I think 36 at the last count.
It's a huge amount of new spells.
And then a dozen or so new patron spells. So,
yes. Yeah. You have several new patrons, 30+ new spells, and crazy, crazy monsters that are not D&D template copies, but rather actual stuff that came out of Jack Vance's brain, and that really nobody has ever seen before.
We exhumed him.
Well, they came out of his brain on the page, to some degree.
When you guys touched on something that's kind of important when you play DCC, what we want is for each quote campaign setting or appendix N setting to be fully compatible with everyone. Which means if you played a true Langmar adventure or a true Dying Earth adventure, you're not necessarily going to be able to represent a traditional wizard or cleric. So the rules will allow you to have those traditional DCC or D&D-ish classes in there, but you can also use the tools inside the book to play a straight-up Dying Earth campaign using these classes if you chose to roll just those kinds of characters and exclude the traditional ones. But it'll work either way, because hopefully your guys are plopping all over the plains and going from one place to the other and visiting different worlds in true Appendix N tradition.
And there's one other thing that's different, which is the grudge token. To try to mimic the kind of skullduggery and quick turns of fortune and shifting alliances, there is a mechanic that actually, sort of like fleeting luck, but in reverse. When bad stuff happens to you, you get a token and you can mess with other people's success. And I like that. It's not going to be for every table.
It's an optional rule as well.
It is an optional rule.
But it really is trying
Sketches,
to
I'm looking at you. It's not for every table. God help us. but it builds up that atmosphere and the Vancian double crossing and legalities and all that skullduggery that happens in the books.
That's awesome. So one of the things Vance is known for is his crazy vocabulary. Like I remember reading Dying Earth, and I usually write if I read a book, I write on the inside cover the words I don't know, and then I either look them up then or whatever I get to a dictionary. And usually I got 2 or 3 words, maybe 4 in any book I read. But when I read him, I mean, it was like 2 columns of words that I had to look up. I learned so many words from him. Then you also discover that a certain number, or he just made them up. And it doesn't appear anywhere. Then most of them are actual words. So Bob, maybe tell me how you guys brought that to life, as well as a sense of humor and some other fun qualities.
I think we started by burning a thesaurus and snorting it. But it's so strange because there's a lot of florid language. There's a lot of archaic language, and you can draw from that. You can look at that, and you can get the meanings. You can find the meanings, and then there's the Vancisms. Yeah. And if when I'd sit down and I'd look at it like, Zempolio, okay, it's not a disease, where we're going to go from here? And you start looking through like archaic English dictionaries that are going back to like Middle English, and all of a sudden you're finding the root words. You're like, wait a minute, this sort of makes sense now. And it was really fun to deep dive in as you're going, and then you're like, okay, but I can't write an entire manuscript like this because that'd just be wrong. And it was just, you have to be passionate about kind of digging through the language, finding what you want to use. And Mark gave us a great tool to start with. He's like, here's words, here's their meanings, use 5. And go through, and it's almost fun in and of itself as you're playing with the language, because the tone of the language sets the tone of the adventure. And so if you're doing something in going from a small town out into the wastes, well, it's not just a small town out into the wastes. That's dull. You start pulling those archaic terms, and all of a sudden it's just this phenomenal journey, and it's just about word choice. And that's what made Vance so great to read. It's the stories are wonderful, but his word choice has made them exceptional. And with Mark's help, I think we've done the same thing.
Yeah, and I think we didn't really want to recreate Vance. I mean, we're not trying to become Vance, but we do want to honor, essentially a key part of people's experience with Vance, which is the rich vocabulary and just being able to place that appropriately within the text. And so that was kind of our format, our guideline, is to really try to make sure that we did bring that light humor, because a lot of that language is playful. A lot of it is to use a humorous effect. And I did what you did, Joseph. When I started my list, I created a spreadsheet with 400 words that that were new to me, and then I went to the OED, and then I looked up the roots of all the words, and then I marked the ones that were Vancisms, and then I ranked them by how popular they were out of 1 out of a million uses in the last 40 years. And then I handed that out to the authors. Just try to say, this is these are the things that we can start pulling from. Get familiar with these, because this will help you as you write, and they may not be something you want to directly take in place. It may be just that you soak into your brain, and it comes up later, and it becomes like part of your process. So that actually is kind of a fun thing that we'll include part of that dictionary in the as part of the box set, because as people go through, it might be kind of fun for them to sort of look at this as a template, but also for their own games. It's just kind of a fun thing that they can inherit, and if they're running a DCC Dying Earth game, or if they're not, because it's always kind of fun to challenge players with the new, and that's part of the fun of what we did.
And it's not a vocabulary exercise, I mean, these spells, these monsters, everything was written with the intent of being entertaining to read, right? Everything we were trying to, oftentimes we would try to get chuckles out of one another with phrases, or, every spell block, you're going to want to take a look and just see what kind of nonsense
has never been such fun.
Is in there. I mean, seriously, it's not just about the gaming material. We really were trying to sort of evoke that feeling of fun when you're reading the stuff.
And a lot of it was like just taking a phrase that's in Vance or a name, and just coming up with what our imaginations could lead to, and it really was a lot of team, consensus and building and sort of, here's what I came up with, here's what I came up with. Let's, oh man, this is great. I can sort of shape and direct what I'm doing. And so really working with these guys has been fabulous, just because I don't think we could have gotten, we couldn't have gotten as near as much done as if we hadn't been together as a team on this. So it's been great.
Well, and taking a single phrase like "make Ron hold your living brain in acid" and saying, "Okay, make him a patron." Give him 3 spells and curses, and you just get to expand on all that, and it's really neat to see the way it grew kind of organically, and it was just fun. It's just twisted and fun.
And Vance is known for, you've all heard the phrase Vancey and magic, right? There's a lot of people who toss that phrase around on the internet without ever having actually read Jack Vance. But Jack Vance, in many ways, did sort of create a magical framework, or I guess a framework for magic that made its way into D&D as Gary Gygax adapted it. And I remember when I first read it, you read it and you see the spell Prismatic Spray. And literally the exact same verbiage that is used in D&D, and you realize, Gygax in some ways just kind of lifted this, and you see, I don't even know how, I say ion stones, I don't know how you guys say it. Everybody says it different. But you see the ion stones, it's really straight out of D&D, or reversed, D&D is straight out of Vance. So one of the challenges here was for us to take really iconic D&D terms that actually aren't D&D terms, but Jack Vance terms, and turn them into DCC mechanisms. So how'd you guys do that? How'd you think about how to convert those kinds of things?
I think it was 2-part, because one is we didn't want to recreate DCC or D&D, right? Because DCC covers a lot of the basics, the things that, the magic missiles, the color spray, the things that are really the Vance, source. So we had to, differentiate what we were doing, but use the context of both, what the spell's abilities are as they're described in Vance. So dig a little deeper to say, okay, that's interesting. He describes it in this way, but we could interpret it, in such and such fashion, so that there is a distinguishing characteristic about it. And we didn't want anything to just be the same but slightly different. So we really tried to go wild in terms of, what those spells do based on the context, but also based on the name in our imaginations. And so everything you're going to find in there is not a repeat of an existing spell. And in those that we couldn't, that hew too closely, we didn't adapt those. So a lot of it is based on the fact that most of these are named spells. They have, some, almost like the spells that are named in the DCC book, certain, like Ecum's Mystical Mask. So we try to inherit the fact that these are people that are spending a lot of time creating their own personal view of magic, their own personal evocations of magic. And what does that mean? Well, who is this guy? What is his history? Let's create a little backstory for him that's based on, what little context there is in the book. And that's what the spell sort of evolves out of. And so a lot of it is kind of coming up with these backstories and evoking that through magic, because this magic is so personalized. And a lot about the Vancian world is, the jealousy and the fact that these are everybody's rivals with each other and guarding their magic, jealously. And what does that mean? Well, that means a lot of the magic is maybe secreted off someplace, and you don't know exactly what this wizard's doing, but he's got a spell named after him. That's pretty cool. So how do we get that, and make that unique? So that's where we kind of started from, and tried to lead ourselves from there.
But one of the things, like reading, like thinking of the items, like let's take Ioun or Ion stones, right? When you read through Rialto the Marvelous and you get to the stuff with Morion and how those stones are behaving, you realize that that AD&D just really kind of missed out on what was possible with those items, and I won't even say they read the Cliff Notes version. I mean, they read the one-sentence summary of what those items were, And in the Vance, they're brain eggs of fire folk that used to exist in stars, and when the stars have died and become dwarves, there's this race that goes and harvests out the brain eggs, and these brain eggs are craving for memories and experience, right? And so when people get these stones take these memories from them, and in the game, they behave the same way. So it's not just something that's going to give you a bonus. You have to imbue the stone with your intelligence and a memory that you're going to lose. And that memory determines the stone's color, it determines its power, it determines even its orbit around you is what you've given. And the stones are plenty powerful. They're not, oh, +1 to my AC. You know, they do a whole lot. You can bank spell burn in them. They can absorb incoming spells. They have all these different abilities. That's really fun, and they can also be stolen. You know, which makes a great thing for judges. You know, if your PC, you know, has an iron stone that someone's abusing, it can get stolen, and that's a lot of fun. And there's even rules for how to make that happen. So
Completely different, and I just really dig the different assumptions, the way magicians work, the way Kugel's luck mechanic is roguelike and stuff like that, but completely unlike the thief luck mechanic that we're all familiar with. And the way the VAT things are built around the patrons in a way that, unlike the elf, is built around a patron. It's just, I think they're really fresh takes on the things we already like about DCC, because they're already related in a built-in way.
Cool. What about you, Terry?
It's difficult to pick a favorite. I mean, the items are really fun. You know, like the.
What about the ion stones?
Yeah, those are great. They're not quite as cool as the ion stone. You know, the Eyes of the Overworld statted up are pretty hip. But one thing that I'm really looking forward to seeing and reading and hearing about, we talked about how the spells have history and how some of the spells got personalized in names, right? And you can read about it in a spell's background. We codified a way for PCs to do that. So PCs can customize a spell and get their name on it, right? So, like for example, we've all been stung by magic missile, right? You spellburn, you got this horde of people, you spellburn magic missile, and you get result 24 to 27, which is just one big freaking missile, right? You have 10 different enemies, and you smatter the crap out of one of them, but you got 9 left, and you had this huge magic missile roll. Well, you can modify that particular result, right? And we have rules in the way to change the spell. So just that 24 to 27 can be changed, and then it can be Shanna's magic missile rather than just magic missile, right? And so it'll be interesting to see how people take pre-existing spells and modify them to their own devices, you know, and what comes out of that. And we also build on that to create your own complete new spell. And you could always write your own spell. You know, in DCC we always let people make their own spells. But here is a sort of a consistent rule set to do it that sort of plays along with the history and the lore of all the other pre-existing spells. So I'm kind of excited to see where players take that.
Yeah, that's awesome. What about you, Mark?
What's my favorite part of the project?
Yeah.
Can I say being done?
I think we're supposed to say it's Doug's art.
It's Doug's art. I mean, it's just working with this great team, and I mean, I really truly mean, you know, it's been an honor and a pleasure working with these guys. It wouldn't have been done without it, and getting to see the play tests that we've done has been exceptional, especially the people's reactions. You know, the play tests. DCC The Dying Earth is a much more. It's meant to be a much more intimate game. You know, it's not because the stories are intimate. You know, they're often a single adventurer or they're just a group of magicians. But you know, seeing how the magician class plays out as a 5th level play test, where it's just a 3 or 4 magicians getting together, it works great and it makes it feel like the novels. You know, just getting to see those kind of effectuated is just it's been fun. But I'm glad that we're at a stage right now where the main manuscript is finished. We're moving on in terms of
I have 12,000 words of edits. I forgot to say.
And it's exciting that we are, we can see the next steps in this big project, which will be, obviously up to Joseph in terms of how that plays out. But we've been living this for the last 18 months or so, and wrapping it up last spring has been really nice, a good feeling. So I'm excited about what comes next.
And it's moving through the process. I think in KieriCon, Doug showed you the sort of early drafts of his art, and he's been thinking a lot about how do you convey the dying earth, the tone of the books as well as the visuals of the books, the dying earth and so on. So once he has that done, it was red, it was the sun. So we'll show you a picture once he has it done.
Better describe those pieces that aren't here really, really well.
But we'll have that one, or he'll have that one done soon, and then we'll we'll show you that, and then we'll work through the rest of the process, and eventually we'll come to a store near you. Anything else you guys want to say to close out this episode of DCC Dying Earth Fireside Chat? No?
Boss.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah, you guys done great. Thanks, you guys.
Oh, I've got a question.
Oh, sorry, you have a question.
So,
Yes, sir,
Langmar, fleeting luck is like the one mechanic that's probably going to migrate to a lot of regular DCC games. Is there a piece out of Dying Earth that you guys can imagine?
Yeah, I think some of it gets to, like, the spell creation stuff is really cool. The fact that it's in line with that quest for it, but giving you guidelines and actual examples and, place for players to start. Oftentimes I think players need that little bit of a seed and say, oh, I can latch onto that and really do something with it. So I think things like the spell creation, the fact that, that's a really cool mechanic. I would say that I have my doubts that the grudge token is going to go to as widely spread, but it's also one of those kind of fun things, that some tables might like to do, and it's not just against other players; it's also against the judge.
Yes.
Right. So that makes it a little bit more of a nice thing to have. Hold your grudges on, but you can use it against the judge in that case.
The expansion on curses.
Oh yeah, we did talk about curses. Yeah.
Curses. They're a small appendix in the DCC book because in Men and Magicians, there's the witches, and witches use curses, and the Dying Earth has witches, and witches also have curses. And building on those and expanding on the levels that we had to work with from the DCC book, and really giving players an option to use curses. They're fun to use at the table because they're generally rhymed or sung, so there's that RP factor to it, which is really fresh and fun. But also, some of the results are really creepy, and they're really tough to get rid of at higher levels. And you can hang something on, the big bad in a campaign that's going to linger for months while you're trying to catch up or undo what he's doing before he can reverse that and come back. And I think that people are going to use curses more in DCC because we've expanded on them.
Awesome. Any other questions?
When are you going to take my money?
Couple months. But you can leave a deposit here.
Small unmarked bills.
All right, cool. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Good job. So next up, I wanted to talk a little bit about Langmar. Michael Curtis is in the audience. Give her a second, like.
This joke's
And we've been calling him Manly Michael Curtis for quite some time.
Yes, ever since Shutter Mountain.
It was recently brought to my attention that his college nickname was Chainsaw.
Oh. You told me you wouldn't reveal that.
No, I didn't reveal that.
I said you're no spooning for you tonight. In April, I'm just kidding. Right.
You can ask him about that later.
Would you mind if I spoke freely for a few moments before we get to the completely unscripted portion of the
Sure,
discussion?
go ahead.
All right. So, everybody, you know, if you've been following DCC Langmar for a little while, you know that I've been talking about it for a while. So you're probably sitting here saying, Curtis, will you please finally shut up about it? And so I'm going to take that opportunity now to indulge myself before I kind of gently tiptoe off the stage and clear the boards for the new hotness which is coming. Empire of the East, Dying Earth, Xcall. So. It's actually very funny that we have DCC Langmar here for sale for the first time, because 5 years ago, I think about this time, I don't remember if it was on a Friday or Saturday night, but it was after the vendors hall had closed. It was you, it was me, and it was Harley, and Doug, and it was Brendan, and I don't know if everybody else was there, but we went to some bar, restaurant like west of here, and we all sat down. We hadn't even announced that we had the Langmar license at that point. So it was just the five of us, and we were sitting down, and we just started brainstorming. And like one of the things that came out of that discussion was, at the start of every Langmar adventure, the heroes should be they should just be completely broke, but have like all the luck in the world. And by the time that adventure is over, they should have like all the wealth in the world and just have no luck whatsoever. And that was kind of where fleeting luck came from. That was the basic of it. That's where that idea came from. And I was so excited to be part of, the whole thing, it's just like, okay, I was, because I was still kind of the new guy at this point, I mean, Brendan and Harley and Doug and, everybody had been around except for, I was a little post after Dungeon Alphabet, but still I was the new guy. So I figured, Harley having Punjar, experience and everything, I thought he was going to be the lead writer. I was just happy to be like, I'll write anything, So I got home and I started putting together like my PDFs and old Dragon magazines of interviews of like the early story of childhood Grey Mouser written by Harley Fisher, and I pulled out a literary magazine that had a Fritz Leiber, and I scanned everything and I put together this big PDF and I sent everything around, and it's like, oh, this is cool reference stuff, guys. So I'm like, wait, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? And Joe was like, all right, you're gonna be lead writer on this then, apparently. So no good deed goes unpunished, pretty much. The curse of competence, we call it around here. Demonstrate you can do something once well, and then you will do it for the rest of your life. So now 5 years later, here we are at Gen Con, and we have it for sale. Some of you backers, if you're lucky, it has arrived, or if not, when you get home, it will be waiting for you. Your wallets will be empty, but you still have stuff coming to you from Gen Con that you've already paid for. The PDFs, of course, went out. So this has been really the first con that a lot of people have been coming up to me saying, wow, you really knocked it out of the park. This is so great and everything. Of course, I'm very excited to hear that. But at the same time, I feel like I'm kind of a fraud because this is not. They say that success has many parents, but like a failure is an orphan. I was fully ready to be if it tanked, I was gonna, I was like, okay, this is on me. I was willing to take all the blame for this. Luckily, that's not the case. All right. Luckily, there are a lot of people who are responsible for this, and although I have been the public face of it, I would like a few moments just to acknowledge some of those people here because this may be the last chance to do so. So, as you know, the whole kind of writing project, like the stories themselves, began with the written word. So I would like Mr. Bob Brinkman, and I would like Mr. Terry Olson, and I would like Brendan LaSalle. Please stand. They in all their ways have helped expand, bring Nawan into DCC, and have helped it bring up to you. There are some people who are not here at Gen Con. Luckily, they're still with us, but they're just not here. So those people, of course, are Steve Bean, Daniel J. Bishop, Tim Callahan, and Edgar Johnson. So, just want to make that. Of course, once the words get put together, there are people who have entirely different sets of talents, or their job is to turn those words into a visual image, and those people, and of course, being artists, I don't think any of them are currently here, so, so I would like, so I will see you, who I'm missing. All right, so just a quick card, of course, Brad McDevitt and Stephen Pogue, who have done some, I think, there are times I think Brad, like, just he did the entire interior illustration. Like, oh, Brad did that one, Brad did that one. But of course, every time you open up a DCC, adventure module or something like that, Stefan's work is there, waiting for you. So, very, thanks, guys, in spirit, wherever you are. See him at the booth. And of course, also there was Chris Arneson, Steve Compton, Tom Galambos, of course, Janelle Jacquez. Jill Janakwe was my first introduction to Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser because she did the work of the deities and demigods, the illustration of them there, and that was my kind of gateway into it. So it was great. Good job getting her back in it. Right? Jesse Moan and Chad Surgiketter? Surgiketter, okay. Chad, sorry, I want to get your name right. All right. And then, of course, once they have cut the interior words, of course, we have some awesome covers. And again, Stephen Pogue has done work on there as well. Jeff Easley, some of you may know him. I think he's a real up-and-comer. I think he's going to go far. Ken Kelly, William McGoslin, San Julian, who's kind of like Madonna, I guess. He just has one name. So that, I think there's also somebody who came in. Now, at this point, it had been working for quite a long time. This was, I think, it had been 4 years of it, and I was tired. I was, oh my God, more like Mar and everything like that. So there was somebody who came along who was so enthusiastic about this whole thing. Somehow I don't think really had a lot of exposure to the library before this all began, or a little bit, or, but anyway, this person came along and was just, yes, Fritz Leiber, you know, it's like, this is Leiber, this is so awesome, you know, and everything. And I was just like, yeah, you know, you're right, this is awesome, this is fabulous. I am so lucky I'm doing this. What the hell, my old man body has been betraying me. So, ladies and gentlemen, Jen, I would like you to remain sitting, please. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are able, will you please join me in rising and give Jen Brinkman the standing ovation she deserves. And you can stand up too. Also involved in that, we have Dak Ultimac. He did editing work on it. Matt Hildebrand and Lester B. Portley, who they helped lay out everything together. You may notice I've kind of rattled off a lot of names, but some names, there's a pair of names which are probably, some of you are saying, is he going to thank these guys or is he just going to forget about them? There are two other people, one of them who was here and one of whom was probably off coordinating Meat Planet Punjar 5000 Catastrophe Island, you know, whatever was going on this year. Fafford and the Grey Mouser only had, you know, each other. They only had, you know, two partners in crime. And I was lucky enough to be a good trio of people in crime here. And we would meet late at night, like in the back alley, like in the back room of the Silver Eel, planning to take down the thieves' house. We had a secret group on Google+. And there, Harley Stroh and Doug Kovacs and myself, we would discuss Nawan and Lankmar, and we would discuss these stories. We would talk everything about architecture. We would talk about like spell stipulations. We would like scan things. It's like, what are we gonna do? Not this. This sucks. This is terrible. So Harley. As my other partner in crime is currently, Harley, would you please stand and allow me to personally thank you for not taking the lead on this one and giving me the opportunity to make a dream come true and actually contribute my own small way to this Fritz Leiber canon in role-playing. So thank you for that. If anybody is wondering, that group, of course, that secret group is no longer in existence thanks to Google+. Thank you, Google+. You know. So, all right. I think I should probably thank you.
No. We're over time.
You got 2 hours. I'm filling. You know. I'm waiting for the ghost of Gygax since he's coordinating on the next one. Oh no, something's right now. This all started. I got an email which was just a picture of a license. It was just like the header of it from like the Fritz Leiber estate. Like that was it. Just this material. Like, does that mean what I think it means? And yeah, sure enough, it did. Yeah. And you were also kind of like overlord Pujar, you know, the Poobah on this as well. Right.
We've done good.
Yep, and you wanted patron dice too. So patron dice is his idea. He's like, I want dice that does something. I've been trying to figure out how to do it. So
curse you, Goodman.
Yeah, we want. I would say is that you know, one of the things that we discussed in the Google Plus group is going into this. We said that we want this to be as good as Lankmar City of Adventure, the first edition AD&D with the Parkinson cover and everything like that. Like that was our benchmark. If we hit that. You know, we will consider we have succeeded on that. I believe we have hit that goal. I'm going to leave it up to you if we've exceeded that gool. I hope we have, but you know, I'm not going to take. I'm not full of hubris. You know, I'm just happy that people enjoyed it. Of course, we wouldn't be here without two very special people who are no longer with us, and those people, of course, are Fritz Leiber and Harry Otto Fisher. So, gentlemen, wherever you are, thank you very much for allowing me to fulfill a lifetime dream, and I'm sure thank you. And we all thank you as well. So, thanks, Catherine. Thanks, all right, thanks.
That's it. That's all I got.
That's all you got.
That was perfect.
We ran out of time, right?
Yeah. No, that was really good, Mike.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. I got nothing else. You guys got any questions?
Nothing else? What do you mean nothing else?
Well, there's more to the seminar, but not more to the microphone.
Is there any more Lankmar coming out?
Well, yeah, but this is such a good moment. Let's cherish the moment.
So
Okay, so we'll talk
marketing.
about the
You
other
should
Langmar.
take this as a...
No, so, well, there is more Langmar coming out, so since we're prompted, do you want to tell them about that thing coming out for Christmas?
The thing coming out, yes, very Langmar Christmas. No, that's not the time.
I was getting hit over the head by an alley and waking up the next day.
Actually, yeah, this year's holiday adventure is going to be a Langmar themed one. It is Unholy Nights in Langmar, where a bunch of kind of mysterious deaths are occurring around the city of Langmar, and you kind of get sucked into this event. And it's interesting. We're playing a lot of this. There is of course the dungeon crawl aspect of it. Go into a room and see what's in there. But there's also some kind of some mysteries to be solved and clues to be followed and whatsoever. So one of the benefits of playing in a city setting, like an urban crawl, is you can do more than just kind of go down to open up every shop. It's not Hamlet. It's like, I know what's in this building. How much treasure they got in here? Let's kill this guy. So I don't want to give away too much of that. Except if you've read some of Nehwan, you know that there are people from other worlds who currently visit Nehwan, and maybe a big fat guy in a big red suit jumping from rooftop to rooftop. But I think that's it, right?
And there's, we're talking about maybe more Langmar stuff after that, so some details to be worked out, but we'll see where that goes.
Yeah. So it's all up to you guys. So if Jan hasn't already sold you 3 box sets, please stop by the booth and buy them. All right.
Okay. Any other questions you guys have? But you need to stay up here for the next part about 5e.
Okay, I will remain here.
Yes.
Thank you.
We're still going to give him a round of applause because that was great. So now we're going to switch gears a little bit. Chris and Tim, are you guys there? Can you join us? We're going to talk about some 5th edition stuff. So for those of you who don't know, this is Chris Doyle and Tim Wadzinski. Chris is I guess, lead author on a lot of the 5th edition projects. And Tim...
Nice shirt.
Yeah, and then Tim is the lead editor on... So we had to give Chris some feedback. Because when you wear a brown shirt in one of these seminars, you kind of like blend in, and then with the green screen stuff, it takes over your whole torso. So good job not wearing a brown shirt. So anyway. And Tim is our lead editor. So we're going to talk a little bit about some 5th edition stuff. As you guys may have known, we have a couple of 5th edition products out that are licensed from Wizards of the Coast to do sort of classic reprints, and then 5e conversions of Into the Borderlands, which is out, Isle of Dread, which is out. You wrote you didn't write. You converted Expedition of the Fairy Beast. Like with this great module with lasers, which is coming out shortly. We could talk a little bit about those. First, if you're a retailer out there frustrated at your inability to get these products, that's because customers keep buying them. So Barrier Beaks is finally back in print as of about a week ago. It will be shipping back to stores basically next week. And then Isle of Dread is on the way here and should be available to retailers again in about a month. So it is coming back and will be here soon. But I wanted to talk a little bit because this is actually kind of an interesting challenge for all of these guys, because you're entrusted to take this adventure that everybody knows and somehow bring it to life in a way that feels like the original work by somebody with a famous name starting with a G, and sometimes other famous names it's a weird task to write in somebody else's world and not leave any of your own creative marks upon it, but let it come across as that author, even though you have to take it and convert it and add a lot, because there's a lot more fleshing out that goes into a 5e module than a 1e module. So I wanted to talk to you guys first about that process, and maybe Chris, when you talked about Isle of Dread, how did you bring that to life without it making it feel like Chris Doyle as opposed to the original module?
A lot of it really starts with the inspiration, and the first inspiration is obviously the original module, and taking those pieces and kind of keeping it within that framework, keeping the tone the same. That's a big thing that we talk about with this product line, is we're trying not to change the words, we're trying not to change Gygax's words or Moldvay's words. We're really trying to keep it very close to the original classic feel to it. So it's keeping the tone right, and then But looking at this, because all those original modules, what made them so great was just those little tidbits of this is where the story could go. This is where, you know, we're not going to tell you, we're going to hint at it, we're not going to give it to you, we're not going to map it all out, but we're going to give you that framework, and then it's anybody's responsibility to go and run with that. And that's what's great about role-playing games and being a game master. You can take that little tidbit and you can run with it. So that's the core of it, and the fascinating part. We're just, you know, a lot of people don't have time to go and run with it and fully develop a plot and flesh it all out. So we've done that for you, but it's really more of an example of this is one way you can take it. And, you know, but it's not the only way, but this is the way that we've kind of chosen to show. So that's the first big part.
Like with Isle of Dread, what were some of your favorite, you know, loose threads that you could expand upon?
Oh, it was just there was a great. I mean, it was an island with dinosaurs. Who doesn't love that? And then there was a dungeon, and then there was a hint of some kind of plot of a great, you know, fallen race of humanoids that were possibly from the stars. But you know, yeah, you figure out the rest of it, kind of thing. So that was the fascinating part of it, of taking that little thread and then running with it. And fleshing it out, and that's where I think I had the most fun with that. And then, you know, it's sometimes it gets difficult though. Sometimes it's hard to, you know, all right, stop, enough. We've developed it enough. It's like now we're good. You know, let's go for. But then you're like, oh, but there's just one little more part we want to add. We want to make this little part. And then I'm like, oh, I can't do this and then not do that. And so you know, and then the fun parts of taking some of the original monsters and spells and then bring them up to date for 5e. Most of the new monsters that we have are all old monsters that people are familiar with that just haven't been statted up for 5e yet. So that's a fascinating part of it. And if you notice, the appendix of Isle of Dread is huge when it comes to new monsters, thanks to the dinosaurs and the other critters that were on the island. So we just went kind of crazy with that. I mean, who doesn't love dinosaurs? I mean, dinosaurs are fun.
I would guess the people who live on the island with dinosaurs are
yeah, I don't know though. Yeah, maybe not. Just get eaten by them.
So Mike, you had to convert Expedition to the Barrier Peaks.
Did.
Tell us about that.
Oh my God! All right, so it was amazing how tight a module this was. I mean, that was kind of interesting going into. I mean, it was designed for a tournament. So you go like, oh look, mysterious metal cave, and you go in there, and 4 hours later, hey, get the hell out! Here's a boulet for your trouble. You know, I mean, so there wasn't a lot to kind of hold on to that. And again, it's all about finding that little part, that little hook and everything. And so the idea that there's which works for a convention game is, you know, mysterious raiders are sacking towns and forts and stuff like that, and then you get there, you kind of read the module, and there's nothing really about who's doing all that. You know, I mean, I assume that maybe it's the things which are breaking out, but this seems more organized. So that was kind of my aha. Maybe there is something behind this. So that was kind of the hook that allows you. All right, let's kind of put a big bad in here. Add out and add a whole another big bad level and the rest of that. So that was kind of once you crack that code, that's good. You just need that first point of purchase, like climbing any mountain. You know, you have to find that first footstep. And that was the case with Expedition to the Barrier Peaks.
What was kind of the most interesting thing you had to convert, like a creature?
Well, there was a lot of robots. That was very but there was one. I'm going through that. I'm like we're pulling every book off the shelf and everything like that. I sent an email to Mike Merles, and I was like, Shidu? Have you guys done Shidu? You know, giant-headed psionic lion, the horse things, and they're like, no. I'm like, okay, guess I'm doing Shidu. You know. So.
What about you, Chris? What's your favorite or most challenging conversion item?
There's a lot of moments like that, and then there's the moments when you go and you stat the monster out, and then the latest Wizards of the Coast book comes out, and guess what they decided to do? And then it's like, uh-oh, giant crayfish are now in an official book, and it's like, all right, so now we have to go like redo it. And I look at it and I say, wow, I wasn't really close to what they were thinking. So, but the one story I think that I want Tim to touch on is the amulet from Borderlands. There was too many emails and a couple of phone calls and text messages more about one magic item conversion than you ever want to hear about, probably.
Well, let's hear about it.
Well, I think it was the amulet in the original. It was the amulet of protection from evil, right? Well, in 5th edition, they got rid of the spell protection from evil. It's not protection from evil and good. So we just had to debate that a little bit and rework the encounter where those were mentioned, just because we really wanted them to be amulets of protection from evil, like in their original spirit. But obviously, Chris figured it out, and they work out great. So, but yeah, at first we're like, oh, wait a minute, they changed that spell. Like, uh-oh.
Yeah, it's one of those things where when you're actually doing the design work, you almost like gloss over it, and you're like, oh, what a big deal. And then the editor comes calling or texting or emailing or all three,
showing up
on the same day. And it's like, we have a problem here. And I'm like, oh, what's that problem? And it's like, then he really makes you think about it a little bit more. And you're like, wow, yeah, well, that really doesn't work, does it? And it's like, back to the drawing board. It's like, but I'm kind of working on something else right now. And then it's like, get back into that one. So, but yeah, so that was probably one of the more interesting dilemmas we had when we were
it's hard to get, forget 30, 40 years of, game mechanics that have been hardwired into you through, like, oh, you have protection from evil, everybody knows what that does, and then you have protection from good and evil, what is that? So, yeah, totally get that.
Sounds like a way to save word count, is what that
right,
is.
isn't it?
Those fools.
Give them ideas.
Well, Tim, you've done an amazing job of catching all those discrepancies. And what blew my mind is Tim is now catching discrepancies in the original TSR modules. Do you want to tell us a little bit about him? I guess these are posthumous edits. Tell us about some of the stuff you found in Barrier Peaks, which was one of the most interesting ones to me.
Well, that one, there's so many maps in that one with the spaceships, and they're quite intricate, right? And so when I get one of these to go through, I take the manuscript and the draft maps that they have, and then I'll take my original copies that I still have sitting on my shelf, and then I'll get a PDF, and I like to look at all of them just to see how they play together. And with Barrier Peaks in particular, there were a couple of levels on the spaceship where I was just counting squares, because something just seemed funny to me with the way the lake was referenced, and that led to the level above it, because there's trapdoors connecting things, and then I realized the elevators weren't in the same spots on all the maps, so they were supposed to be vertical shafts, but they were that. And so I contacted Joseph about that, and he's like, wait, because he thought I was talking about the new maps, I think.
Because we have somebody redraw for 5e, I thought that's what you meant.
And then he's like, wait, no, you found a discrepancy on the original? It was like all caps, original maps, I said, I think I did, so quadruple checked it, and I pencil marked everything. And then it was cool for Barrier Peaks, I was able to interview Diesel LaForce, who did the cartography for those maps.
So 40 years later, the editor comes calling.
Yeah. We have a problem.
You're fired, LaForce. You'll never work again.
So, that was really cool about it, first of all, but, that was an interesting conversation to have with the guy who drew the maps back then, and he goes, yeah, I probably just made a mistake. So, but one of them we left in its original mistaken placement, but everything else we tried to touch up so things lined up properly. But it was kind of an eye-opener.
Tim has an uncanny eye, like a sixth sense for detecting these discrepancies. It's kind of incredible.
So Chris would probably drive him bonkers. Probably nice
text messages all time
Joy and Curtis,
So you guys have done an amazing job with bringing a lot of the classic TSR modules to life, and it's been a lot of fun, getting copies of the first printing and the second printing and the third printing, and comparing all the printings of the old TSR modules, because they did change things. Like in Barrier Peaks, they swapped out several pieces of the art. If you look through the handout booklet, plus renumbered it. And the renumbering, I think, was a correction of an error, but the changing out the art, there's no clear reason as to why. So we talked to, because I talked to Aerologos, and he doesn't really have any recollection as to why they swapped out his art. But they just did. So it's neat seeing the evolution of these over time. And it's kind of amazing that it takes us 300 to 400 pages to convert what was at the time a 16 to 20 page adventure module. Like, to your point, it's amazing how tight and concise those original adventures were. And we do provide a lot more detail these days and give a little more instruction to the DM, but it's been
that's one of the challenges, because the game playing experience has changed, between when these modules were in. I mean, I had in Barrier Peaks, I had to put in a sidebar because, if you're relatively new to D&D, you're kind of expected, compact dungeons, and if you're like, oh, we'll just go into every room, we'll see what's in there and everything. If you do that on the first level of Expedition to Barrier Peaks, there are literally 150 rooms, and 120 of those are just the room is empty except for some skeletons and some junk. It'll literally, you would just, so I put in this, to avoid yourself being killed by your players. This is a way to hand wave, progress.
So we're going to tell you about the next one now. So we have sort of an ongoing agreement with Wizards of the Coast. There's going to be a lot of these over time, and there's some debate as to which ones we should do next, and so on. And of course, they have the ones they want to do, so we kind of work it out. But we have one that we want to do that, which what we've done so far is what I call some of the big names and spotlights. And now we're doing one that's a little less of a big name, but just a lot of fun. And it's actually one of Mike Merle's personal favorite adventures, so he's really excited about it. Mike, do you mind being Vanna for a minute and flipping over a couple of those posters? So it's the third poster in, I think.
I already know what the.
Oh wait, it's that one. It's the last one. There you go. There you go. D&D: The Lost City. So, yay! So Barrier Peaks is at the printer and should be in print by December. And then Chris here has already converted The Lost City. Maybe tell them a little about this fine module.
Done. So yeah, this one's a little bit off the beaten path, but if anybody familiar with this module, yeah, look at that, awesome. So this one is ripe for additional material, and that's being an understatement right there. Because the whole lower part of the pyramid was not, it was just like an outline of like, here's the room name. What was interesting is they gave you the title of the room, that little snippet right there of what the room was supposed to be, and then they gave you the monster and the treasure. And I'm telling you, man, a lot of these did not make sense why there were 3 blink dogs in one room, and then there was a vampire in the next room. So it was awesome to be able to do the regular conversion on the upper level, and then that lower level of the pyramid, I get to flesh that out entirely, just like the upper level, including read aloud text and everything, and then trying to figure out how all those monsters work together. And a couple of times it was impossible. I mean, there was no way. It's like I felt like I was like, yeah, okay, I can't use summon monster again. It's like it's just not going to work. So, but I did try to kind of make it all cohesive. I'm kind of a big fan of dungeon ecology and like why things are in places where they are within reason. So that was a challenging part of that. But then after I got past that, being able to actually flesh out the Lost City, which I think was a half a page in the original module, there's a lot more detail now, including maps. And then all the catacombs, there's 5 sets of caverns of catacombs underneath the Lost City. And I'm like, well, I could just do 1 or 2 of them, but then, then I'll get all sorts of negative feedback. Well, why didn't you just do all of them? So we did all of them. And then we did the Goblin Caves too. So there was a lot of material. I mean, you could easily, your characters could probably be 10th, 11th, 12th level by the time they're done with this. It is really a sandbox in a book, and it'll probably be a pretty thick book. And should keep your guys very, very busy over time, and there's a lot of interesting twists and turns in there. So it was a really, really fun one to do. So although not maybe mainstream from some of the other modules out there, it was an absolute joy to actually convert that one.
So it's like a real mega dungeon now.
It kind of is. Yeah. It kind of is. Yeah, there was 100 encounter areas just in the pyramid, and then I didn't actually count how many more there's, but there's probably at least another 100 more. So probably even more than that. Cool. So.
You guys have any questions? Sounds like a lot of you guys have played this and enjoyed it. That's awesome. Yeah, so some of the stuff we're going to do is going to be a question, sir.
Oh, okay, so that was one of my favorites when I was a kid, and I played through it and run it. I don't remember the name of the creature in the very, very, very bottom part, like Zardoz? Zargon. How nasty is he now in the conversion?
He's fairly nasty. He's not really a god. He was like god-like, so he's just a really tough, big bad monster. And I got to really play around with a lot of the 5th edition rules with lair actions and legendary actions with him, which was awesome. Yeah, he's just a big fight. Actually, he is the big bad, but there is a lot more that goes on underneath, even lower. And it is all kind of interrelated to him, so I won't spoil anything on that. But yeah, he's pretty bad. I mean, you probably got to be 10th to 12th level to probably take him. And if you actually just go right down through the rooms, you'll only be like 6th or 7th level probably. So if you don't get help with all the factions, you will probably be toast. In a lot of these, there's a lot of encounters where Michael talked about the reverse, but like in the original, like B2, it's like, you kick open a door and there's 17 orcs in your first level. It's probably not going to go well. A modern game designer for 5e wouldn't do that, but we kept it that way because, hey, let's teach them a lesson. So not a bad thing from time to time. So yeah, but there are ways you can go and get your butt kicked and then be captured, and then then there's a lot more opportunities down below to get yourself up to that level where then you can go and actually deal with him. So
that was one of the big debates early on as to how you convert it. Do you keep the imbalance of the original system, or do you convert the balance, so to speak? And for the most part, we err on the side of keeping that original.
Yeah, the imbalance is still there. You know, you got blink dogs, which are like, you know, CR 1/4, and then you've got in the room next to it, you know, near it, you know, the vampire CR 12 or 15, whatever it is. So yeah, it's totally not gonna fly, but.
Awesome, cool.
Do we have one more question?
Yeah, this might be getting a little too deep into the weeds, but every time I've run this module, about the time that the players find the cults and they find out about the hidden city, they're like, to hell with the rest of this pyramid, I want to go find out what's in the hidden city. And I'm blaming a little bit of the fact because there is nothing in the hidden city in the original module. But my players would always they were bypassing huge chunks of the pyramid and getting right past that into there. Did you do something to make the lower half of the pyramid before you get to the undercity part a little more tied into things, or?
I would say I tied in the city and below the city more with the whole Zarkon plot.
Okay.
So yeah, the lower part of the pyramid is still very much the same, and I did kind of make it make sense a little bit from that dungeon ecology standpoint as best as I could, because it was really hard. And you'll see some of the techniques I kind of used on them to kind of make it all sort of make sense. But no, you very much so. You could skip that whole part of the lower part of the pyramid and get down into the Lost City, and you can keep yourself very busy down there and get yourself a lot of levels, and then actually truly be ready to take on the big baddie. And what's great about 5e has rules for factions, which plays right into it. I mean, the first time I ever played this module, it was probably 83, 84, and this is how it used to go. Listen at the door, kick the door open, roll for initiative, a die 6, by the way, and you want to roll low. Yeah. How messed up is that? And then attack. And I remember we got to the one room, I think it was room 11 or whatever it was, and we kicked open the door. I think the die 6 was out of my hand, and then my game master was like, "They say hello," and I was like, "What? What do you mean they say hello?" It's like, I'm ready to kill them, and it's like, well, they're people, and it was like mind blown. It was like, wow, this is role playing. Like, you could do this, and the irony about that is we probably spent another hour just talking, and we'd never done that before, and we're like, wow, this is what a role playing game could be. And it was really a seminal moment, and then what was fascinating to me was the guy who was running, and it was just one game master and me. He never game mastered again after that, and I think that's when I started becoming a game master. And then a few years after that, I got into the RPGA, and I mean there was 4-hour tournament sessions where you never picked up a die. And it was all just back and forth, and it was really kind of the benchmark moment, in my opinion, where I kind of discovered there was so much more to the game than kicking open the door. I mean, we all love that. I mean, but there's more to that, and the factions just play into that beautifully. And the fact that 5e already has rules for factions, so that kind of tied in really nicely. And if you don't get the help of the factions, you're probably not going to make it. So it's a brilliant design of a module, and it really did export very well to 5e.
That's awesome. Cool. Any other questions you guys have?
When are we getting it?
Hopefully Origins of next year. That's the goal. We have a historical record of not meeting those goals. Because once we get involved, somebody counts squares, and we have to go find Diesel and talk to him. So, we'll see how it goes.
But we're consistent in our inconsistency.
That's true, very much so. Yeah, it'll be really good though when it finally comes out. So
publishing hard. Writing easy.
All right, cool. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks. I want to ask one more person to join me. Harley Stroh, if you could come up for a minute.
We lock the doors, we can't get out.
So I want to ask Harley about a couple things. I heard you're running a tournament.
I am, and it's going really well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you guys, the tournament process is very different from the traditional adventure writing process. To quote Harley, I could have written 3 adventure modules in the time it took me to do this. I was wondering, well, that won't make fun, never mind. Tell us.
No, you couldn't, Harley.
Well, you could in a couple of years. But tell us about about that process, the sort of iterative and collaborative process of writing these tournaments and how that goes.
So the past 2 years we've thrown a really wide net and solicited adventure encounters from a large group of authors.
Yeah.
And so well, all right, let's just go through Langmar, this year's adventure. You, Mark, and I were walking back from breakfast at Gen Con last year. Together we came up with the idea of the 3 different rounds of what they'd look like for the adventure. And then we got home and once things, the dust shook out, we solicited authors for encounters, gave them guidelines. Authors pitched ideas back to us, and then from that, I selected the encounters that I thought would be a good fit for the tournament. We gave the authors the deadlines. They threw back ideas to us, or they wrote the encounters, and then since then we've been working to slowly mold these disparate encounters into a cohesive arc that can serve as the tournament.
And one of the differences here is that traditionally an author writes an adventure, or maybe has a couple collaborators, but one of the principles behind the tournaments is that if you have a wider group focusing just on one room, or maybe 2 rooms at a time, with somebody being the conductor of this orchestra, that you can get these, I guess, very thoughtful room designs that wouldn't necessarily, one person couldn't necessarily produce this in a reasonable amount of time.
Right, yeah, whereas, for an adventure module, and an author pours all his thoughts into this big adventure, here we have an opportunity for authors to pour a lot of thought into just 1 or 2 encounters. At the same time, it's very much, by necessity, an egoless project, because you may pour a lot of thought into that encounter, but by the time it's been received, it's been edited, then it's been molded into the larger adventure arc, it may not look a lot like what you wrote initially. It's an iterative process. So, for instance, Terry Olson, he's well known for writing these brilliant.
He's the puzzle guy, right?
He's the puzzle guy. He's our puzzle master, and so Terry, we can't give it away because we're actually going to be playing it out tomorrow. And
tell us what happens in round 3.
Right, exactly. But I'll tell you what goes on in round 1. But Terry wrote this brilliant puzzle. It was well suited to Langmar, and it was really well suited to gamers. Which is that's the beautiful marriage. At that point, oh, this is brilliant. And I came back to Terry, I'm like, Terry, can you do the same sort of thing for me for round 3? And then we'll litter clue, but make it really hard, right? And Terry's like, oh yeah, I can make it hard. And Terry wrote this mind-bending puzzle for round 3, but we had a couple clues, and so we were going to leave them, 1 in round 2 and 1 in round 1. And if the players are paying a lot of attention, they're going to discover these clues, so that by the time they got to this impossible puzzle for round 3, if they'd done really well, they'd be able to solve it. But then we go into playtest, right? And Mark's playtesting at GaryCon. And we have the entire round laid out. Terry's is the second encounter, and they can't get past it. We didn't have to playtest the rest of the adventure because nobody got past Terry's first round. But that's the iterative process, and so then we have to go back to Terry and say, all right, Terry, your easy puzzle stumped our judges. We need to make this a little bit easier. And Jeff Goad had a really insightful moment. He said, well, everyone thinks the puzzle is either too hard because they can't solve it, or too easy because it came to them really easily. But I think Terry, through those 3 passes, struck this perfect balance where, some of our teams get it really easily, some struggle with it, and some never get it. And then that's really that balance that you're looking for in the tournament. And I think finally it feels like, year 3 of the DCC tournaments, we've hit that. We've had groups that have made it out of round 1 successfully. We have groups that TBK'd, and we have a small group that's right in the middle. So
that's awesome.
It is actually really, it's working. Yeah.
And the tournament experience is pretty stressful and very different from everyday adventures, I would say.
It's amazing. Like some of the finest judges I know. We have Haley Sketch, we have Terry, we have Tim DeShane, we have Eric, Dom, Mark, Mike Bolam, Aaron Cole. Anyways, collectively they have hundreds of years of gaming underneath their belt. And they're still stressed. When the Doom Gong rolls, and it's on, right? And this is after, they've play tested, they ran the adventure, and then we met, for 4 hours at Sketch's place to go over the round, and then, even in the moment, we're all conferring, against one another, making sure that we have standardized results, because DCC rejects standardization. So Terry's going to hit one encounter. Terry wrote the encounter, and he's going to come to me and say, Harley, how are we going to roll this? And so all of a sudden, the pit boss is going to know, okay, all right, this is what we decided, this is how we're going to rule it. And so when Haley comes, it's like, all right, Harley, I have 25 polar bears walking down the road. What are we going to do about this? There was a summoned animal that went horribly awry. It's not in the adventure, but when you have fleeting luck and you can spell burn, and you get a max on summoned animal, it sucks. And it's just like, oh, there's 25 polar bears in Langmar, sweet. Literary Langmar. But so even these finest judges are, I mean, they put in the pre-work. We put in the homework the night before. I mean, we'll be meeting again tomorrow night for round 3. And it comes off, and in the moment the players have a wonderful time. Everyone, both sketches TPK'd their parties, and they had a great time.
Yay!
And then the tournament comes off.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome.
So something else you've been worked on was DCC number 100.
Yes, sir.
And this was the art I forgot to bring. So if you go to Doug's booth, the cover art for DCC number 100 is done. We talked about it before. The name of it is The Music of the Spheres is Chaos, which is awesome. And if you look at Doug's booth, it's kind of in the upper left. It's got like this monk-looking guy who's kind of undead, snow, swirliness, dragons, black. It's really cool. I'll take a look. Anyway, it's awesome. The cover art's done. Now Doug's working on the maps.
Yes.
This is one with 5 spinning maps, which is crazy. I'm not yet sure how we'll publish this. It'll probably be a box set or something. I don't know. It's basically a board game, but RPG format. I really can't figure out how to package it properly. But anyway, it's awesome. Doug's working on the maps. Once he's done with the maps, then we'll sort of pass it on to Jen for editing and sort of go through that process. But tell us about this adventure. I mean, you've talked about it before, but tell us about sort of the process of it coming to life and what it's about and all this cool stuff.
So for DC 100, we wanted to go big.
Yeah.
And so to make an adventure that has cinematic visuals, so that there's the possibility for lots of handouts and incorporated puzzle handouts that you've been hitting at me for like years. Like, Harley, we have to do it like this magazine. You can't say the magazine, or it gives away the handout. And so just the opportunity to pack as much raw DCC adventure into a single module as possible, where we just there should be no small adventures, and this is a big adventure. There's the opportunity for the PCs to transform the entire universe through their actions within here. No, that's cool, right? Like Tower of the Black Pearl, right? Like all the candles go out. There's no more heroes in the world. Like, whoa, we just played a first level adventure, and now everything's changed. And this is kind of in that same vein where it's what you want. Imagine what you want. You want adventures to be meaningful, and this is in that vein.
So it'll take a while to get this one done. So there'll be a brief pause in the DCC line. 100 has to happen before 101, which is how this works. Years ago, I printed a DM screen, which was, I forget the exact number, but it was number 37 or 38 in the DCC line. And it's the first DM screen I printed. I sent it to the printer to do a DM screen. They had all these production problems because they'd never done one. Anyway, I had like the next 3 modules like queued up, and I was like, I can't print any of these because they're sequentially numbered until this one is done. So luckily I learned that lesson long ago, and now I know it's going to be like a year pause for us to get 100 done before 101 can come out. But it'll be worth it. Like, it's going to be an awesome adventure, and it's going to really be worth being number 100, I think.
I hope so. Thank goodness for the decimal system. You'll see DCC 99.12. Thanks for the chance to write it. I mean, that comes along once in a lifetime. It's really good.
Yeah. Then one other thing to talk about is the Goodman Games Gazette. Yeah, so you guys know we do this as kind of a house rag. It's always been, I don't even know what to call it, just stuff we're thinking about, or cool photographs, or random articles, things like that. And Dak Ultimac did that for the first couple of years, but we have handed the torch to Harley. And you've sort of finished up a couple that are in process, but now just tell us your thoughts on evolving this format and this whatever you want to call it. Fanzine, news mag.
Yeah, well, it's sort of. I mean, it's not the Gone Farmer grown up, but it's just. But it's this opportunity to kind of see behind the curtain at Goodman Games, to get to know the DCC family. I mean, you guys are amazing. We have the best fans anywhere. So the fans family. So the opportunity to share some some insights from Goodman Games with them, also to share cool content from the road crew, to really build up to a DCC day, maybe, which and really kind of integrate the different lines in a way that that is meaningful and at the same time has a lot of content that is fun to read. As we're all focused, really hard on getting these adventures done. There's all this cool drama happening on the side, getting to meet road crew people, having cool stories from conventions, and so to kind of collect that stuff that's on the sides, so it's not just gaming material. And this is an opportunity for that.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, cool. Any questions you guys have of Harlan? Personal or professional?
Jim, I forgot to mention you. I'm remiss. Jim was also a great tournament judge and is one of the reasons that round one went off so well. So sorry about that, Jim. Yes, sir.
The fans seem to really love Jim's maps for the tournament.
So yeah. So
what are the chances? Like, is there a future in that for future Goodman Games products, maybe, or how could we do something?
Yeah. I can't speak for Joseph, but I know one of the big critiques that we always hear about our maps is that, Doug's map is beautiful. Why can't I see this on the paper somewhere? And so I can't share this with my players. Even you were saying, with Music of the Spheres, Harley, it's cool that the judge gets 4 spinning bits, but what about everybody else? There's 8 other people at the table. And so, for those that didn't see the tournament, Jim was able to provide us with these amazing map bits that, I don't know, they're some weird alien technology where you slap them on any substance and they stick, and you can draw on them and spill your Coke on them. And
there were aliens called color forms. They came and gave us this technology.
No, you say that out of ignorance, I swear. This is not color forms. Anyway, so
and for those of you who don't see Jim Skadge sitting in the audience here, you should talk to him afterwards.
Yeah.
But it is a project he's working on that will probably end up as a DCC third-party project of some kind.
Yeah, a chance to see the maps made live. Yeah.
Yep. And it's kind of a. Do you want to come up here and describe it as long as we're talking? I can give my version of it, but it involves maps and
Yeah, I'd love to hear you. I'd love to hear your version of it.
Colorful.
They actually are going to be called, probably the product name will be called Dungeon Forms, because part of the idea was driven by, some of us are old enough to remember color forms as kids. They were these pieces of plastic that you could put down on a very specific board, and you could move the shapes around and make things out of it. It always bugged me that as a DM, now a judge, how maps are done at the tables. The biggest inspiration was Doug's artwork. At my home group, they're fairly new players except for Haley, and they asked to see one of the maps afterwards, and I showed them Doug's map of Portal Under the Stars, and their comment was, it's a real shame the players can't see this at the table. So I took an idea I'd been working on for a long time with this color form thing, and I married it up with the idea of this great artwork, and the goal is that you will be able to have these, think of them as dungeon tiles, except they're anti-slip on the back, and the paper on the top is an alien technology. It's water resistant, you can dry erase, wet erase, and when you're done, you can just take the piece off the table and put it back in its storage where it came from. The beauty being that you can do fog of war with a map on the table, with great artwork, all at the same time in a fast way for a DM, so you don't have to worry about how you're going to draw maps on tables anymore.
Well, and when you bump it, it doesn't
move. The tiles that you see now that are cardboard, when you put them out on the table, everybody has to be really careful if they're going to put their mini on it, because you never know when you're going to shift the tiles around. All of that goes away. Everything is 1-inch gridded, so you can do your mini battles if you want, as opposed to theater of the mind, but the idea is to get that artwork as best we can out on the table in a way that people can actually enjoy it. And really the only drawback right now is that no one can get at Doug's time except this guy. So that's the biggest drawback right now. But other than that, yes, so we're hoping in the next 3 to 6 months to have something at the very latest launch around GaryCon next year.
And they are really cool. They make the tournament, they facilitate the tournament play, but they facilitate the play of the adventure, I think. Yeah, so awesome. Well, that's it. Thanks, Jim. Okay. Thank you. Guys, I have just a couple more things to tell you. One of them is, I'm going to show you another couple pictures. Now, one of these may look familiar. Let's see. So there's this adventure that Michael Curtis wrote a couple years ago called The Sinister Sutures of the Seamstress, which was a DCC Halloween adventure. One of the things we've been thinking about, or I've been thinking about, is that DCC Halloween, a lot of people love these and they play them over Halloween, of course. But it's not necessarily a Halloween adventure. It's really what we've effectively done is create 4 years now of horror-themed DCC adventures. So we're going to reprint this adventure with the tagline Xcall Classics Horror in a 8.5 by 11 format with new art and so on. But I've been thinking about ways to essentially give retailers a reason to carry this year-round as opposed to just around Halloween. So just let me know, you will see this DCC Horror tagline. This is Matt Hildebrandt's mock-up. Matt's in the back. He does wonderful graphic design and has really facilitated a lot of things this year. So good job, Matt. And I want to show you the picture for one that's coming up. This will be the cover. I'll make sure you can actually see this. To this year's DCC Horror Adventure, which will come out around Halloween, called Creep Scrag Creep. Some of you, yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. Some of you may get the Abraham Merritt reference, but Stephen Newton wrote this, and it is Stephen is sort of making himself known as the go-to guy for DCC horror. But it's an awesome adventure. It's a funnel. You wake up on a sailing vessel, everybody else is dead, and something's hunting you, and you're stuck in the middle of the ocean. It's really cool. It's kind of like Aliens meets DCC. He and the people he knows who have run it for him have run, I want to say like 7 or 8 playtests now, and have had an 80% TPK rate. He's had 1 or 2 groups, but he's like, some people have survived, so it can be done. But that'll be out for Halloween, and then of course continue past Halloween as well. The last thing to talk about is something I've been thinking about for several years. I have this tagline in my head called DCC Day. And I think we have the road crew, we have a lot of enthusiastic fans, we have a lot of amazing adventures, we have a lot of ways to run adventures that bring groups together, whether it's tournaments or shared funnels or things like that. So I'm thinking about next year trying to organize something probably in May, which will be DCC Day. And it will essentially consist of us giving you a lot of free stuff and just saying, go run some games. So working out the details, but it'll be some sort of situation where if you're in the road crew or want to sign up for it, you get a free adventure and some other stuff. And if you're a retailer, we give you some posters to advertise and things like that. And we'll probably name a day, but it doesn't have to be that day. It can be kind of a window of around that day, a weekend ahead or behind if you've got plans or whatever it might be. So if you have ideas for that, let me know. It's something I want to start putting together. What would make it exciting for you? What would make it fun for you? What would make it easy for you to run? What would be the things that would make your store open to it? Or it doesn't have to be your store, your local church, your local library, your local bar, wherever you run your games. And just give me your thoughts as they come, because I'm interested in ways to kind of make this work. I think that's all I have. And now you got a shout out earlier, which you may have just missed, so you can watch the replay. All right, I will.